and welcome to Rich, Simple, Human. I was hesitating then because not only are you going to listen to Shaun and I today on the podcast, but you're also going to be listening to this on LinkedIn Live. And here we are, live as well as recording for the Rich, Simple, Human podcast. Shaun, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Amazing to see you again. I'm absolutely delighted to have you on the show. And for listeners that don't know you by name, I am going to give you a quick introduction. In fact, I'm not. I'm going to say why I wanted to sit down with you today, because you and I have got, I think, a very shared heart for people, for healing, for encouragement, and for humanity being a bit more human. And I hope that doesn't sound very vague, but you and I are certainly joined in our mission to help people live more richly simplistic lives. Shaun, would you agree? Anything to add?
I fully agree. And I possibly would add that, adding to that with more about connection these days with all the distractions we have. Really getting to the root of what it is that we need under all of this noise. We really need that connection. A look in the eyes, a hand on the shoulder, a coffee with a friend, taking a moment to pause in nature with someone you really care about, or even just thinking about someone you really care about. Just the simple stuff again. It makes me think of the pace of life, and a participant in one of my retreats said, we have all this technology, we have all this automation, and yet my life is still so busy.
It's crazy.
Well, everything gets delivered to my door, but yet I don't have time for that coffee. I have automated banking and all of this stuff happening all the time, but I'm too busy just to have a connection moment with myself or with nature. Yeah.
So for people that are listening, I'm going to encourage everybody to stay listening because, of course, I think our current attention span is 90 seconds, I think science is telling us. So if you are now 90 seconds in, please stay tuned, because the universe may be calling you to listen to this conversation today. We're going to cover some really interesting topics, and you will definitely learn something, because between us, Shaun and I have years and years of practitioner experience helping people slow down and really become who they're meant to be. So please do stay listening. Shaun, I'm going to give you your proper title, which I think is currently Human Performance Specialist. Is that right?
Yes. I've had many titles, tried many suits on, but it's really about human performance, but human performance in the sense that we are looking at it from the inside out perspective rather than the external. Chasing a goal, chasing an accolade or a target or a time frame if you're an athlete. And we can maybe jump into that a little bit deeper as well, as why I switched from chasing the external and becoming more embodied and driving and listening and connecting to myself from the internal. So it's an inside out journey, whether I'm working with leaders, athletes, or performers, or everyday people that want to understand themselves and their lives better, and how it all fits together in the greater context that we're living in. So it's not just this myopic thing, I need to do breath work to change this. It's how does that then make me relate better or connect better with my colleagues at work?
Absolutely. And I'm going to go back to a word you've just used, embodied, because I've seen that word hanging around in the yoga space for years and years. And of course, before I became embodied, I thought I was. Of course, I've got a body. Of course, I'm in my body. And the reality now is, having learnt what I've learnt, I wasn't in my body at all. I was living in my clever head, totally disassociated from my body. I had no range at all. I actually had no feelings. Many of my clients come to me and I say, how do you feel? And they say, I don't feel anything. And they sort of think that's a hallmark or a badge of honour. But I can't feel anything. I'm tough as nails, tough as old boots, as we might say in England, and I'll just keep going, especially if they're a founder or a leader who has got to where they've got to. I often see this in people that are, so that first generation of success, they're really pushing and grinding hard to prove something. And they don't really want to feel anything because it's going to slow them down. The word embodied, if we were explaining that to somebody who has no idea what they're talking about, what would you say?
Yeah, well, firstly, to be disembodied is almost distracted by the external or caught up by the pace of something external to us. And to be embodied would be what's happening right now in this moment. We can't see it. Hopefully we can feel it. But as I'm talking to you, I always use my own example. I'm staying more embodied by connecting to my breath and not running into my thoughts about what should I say? I need to sound clever. I need to impress people. This is my story. I need to be the best performer here on this live podcast I'm doing with you. But really, I'm connecting to my breath, slowing things down, and aware of not only my thoughts. My thoughts are still an embodied experience because it's part of us, but I'm also connected to my hips. I'm also maybe connected to a bit more heat in my body that I'm experiencing now because it's exciting to talk about these things. And it's a little bit maybe nerve-wracking or anxiety-provoking in a good way that we're doing something live and sharing something that we really care about. Yeah. So I'd say embodiment, or the experience of being embodied, is multifaceted. It's on a spectrum, and we can feel many things in one space or time and not get caught up in one zone of the body. And also that's sometimes a good starting place for people that are looking for a more embodied life, is that they eventually start to feel their head, or they feel something in their face when we go through a little somatic exploration in a session. I was like, well, great. Your head is connected to your body. Let's see where those feelings or sensations go. And so it grows from there. So sometimes it's also, in a way, good to meet someone where they're at. And if it's in the head, that's totally fine.
Of course, we'll always start as practitioners in the door that we can get open first, I find. And we never really know where that's going to be until we start the process of engagement. But just as you were talking, Shaun, I was reflecting on my own position because, of course, I'm interviewing you. We're live. There is some pressure in this environment. And I'm just noticing in myself, okay, what am I doing here? And I'm trying not to let my brain run into, I'm not really listening to Shaun, I'm thinking about the next question. I'm really trying to be in my chair, in my feet, in my body, feeling the passion and like almost, I say this to a lot of people, I'm trying to sort of bring every last drop out of the day, of the experience of the moment. Like, can we just see where this goes? And my podcast guests don't, there's no real strategy. They appear, it's a very organic process. We have a chat, we connect, and it happens in many different ways. You and I've connected over many different things. And I think it's that, it's almost not being strategic. I'm not saying just sit back and wait for the world, but you know that feeling of, you can get, you know the vision and you know the goal, but you're very present at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't think I don't know if I've explained that. Could you explain that any better for people that don't really understand this thing that we do?
Yeah. Well, you described it really well, because sometimes it's really hard, first of all, I'd say, to describe these non-verbal experiences. Yeah. Being embodied, we can describe sensation, we can describe how we're feeling while we're sitting, or, but there you spoke about intention. Okay, I'm trying to be, I'm being embodied, but I'm not thinking about the next question. And then there's also a feeling of, well, I can also sit back and just receive. So it's this push-pull that you might be experiencing. Something wants to move, which you're aware of, and it pulls your intention, it pulls your thought, your awareness in a certain direction. But I can also sit back and receive. It's also that moment of where we could sit and, smell the roses type experience. Yeah, that's important too. Because also when we're trying to, in the moment, be embodied, sometimes we find ourselves working too hard at being embodied.
Well, talk about that for a long time.
And that's where I think, from my experience growing up as an athlete, first of all, I was disembodied as an athlete because I was chasing the external. And then I wasn't paying attention to the sensations or the messages in my body saying, stop, you're actually injuring yourself, you're hurting yourself, this is not good tension. Yeah. But the world externally told me, no, that's what you should feel. And that's what's needed to be done to achieve the task. So I didn't have much of the other back in the bliss and feeling, because now when I went back into my body, It was painful. It was those
Well, yes.
tensions. So I had created this double bind of trying to be embodied and losing the felt sense of what that ease and that receiving of life could feel like. So there's
Mm.
this, let's widen that spectrum I spoke of a moment ago. So we can work at being embodied, and it becomes this task we're now doing where it can feel like we're getting there, but then we create more strain or stress in doing the actual thing. But then because we might have been disembodied for such a long time, we've conditioned ourselves out of the other feelings. It's not that they're gone, we can slowly come back. So when we come back, it might be an uncomfortable experience. Just like me coming back to the body and, ooh, tensioning and pain. Now I have to sit with this to go through it again and to feel something on the other side. So to get to that receiving place and blissful state, it was like, wow, it took a long time to come down.
I think that's such an important message for listeners because we have ultimately a very high performance cohort
Mm,
listening here. So they're the leaders, the founders, the entrepreneurs, the people that are pushing, grinding, a lot of athletes because that's the background or the community that I live in. The words you just used then, the double bind, it's a bit like thinking I should go to yoga. And this was my own personal experience. And every time I went to yoga, it was so painful because not only was my body so tight, but
mm,
my mind couldn't turn itself off. So I ended up in this situation where I was in the room trying to be in my body. My brain was doing crazy stuff, and my body was so tight it hurt. And I speak to many, many people about meditation because I teach a lot of meditative practices in the work I do as a sophrologist. And they say, it's just too hard, Lindsey, I can't do it. And what they're doing is describing that experience that you've just articulated. You've
yeah.
got to stay in it to get to the next stage.
Yeah, yeah. Eventually it'll come through. Hopefully all the listeners or the people we're speaking about, in my experience, I needed support to get there. You can't go on this journey alone.
No.
I'd say that first of all, it's great to have a guide or a mentor or someone to share the experience with. It's half of the process, really. But really getting in tune with, right, and at that time, you've also alluded to when something's going on in the psyche, overthinking, think of all that thinking energy going up into the head. Your body will want to anchor itself like a hot air balloon needs something. So tension is driven into the body below the
Oh.
head.
Mm.
So now we go into exercise or movement and we've got all this pre-tension hanging around. Then the things we do that are meant to nourish us are fighting that system. Yeah, so that's why it feels painful. That's why it was painful for me to move in different ways again. One, because I had conditioned my body in such a long time to move like a swimmer and a triathlete. Those were my disciplines.
Mm.
But then to break that pattern, to try something new was so foreign. And my mind was saying no, which then created more tension. And then doing a different pattern said no. Now you're hurting yourself again because this feels too foreign. So just like your example in yoga, I have all this pretension. I'm trying to do something good for myself. So how do I flip the switch here? How do I find a way through this existing pretension and work out what the next steps are for me to move and expand and feel better or feel lighter in my life and do these other things that shouldn't feel so hard? Yeah.
Yet they do.
Yeah. But yet they do.
And I think the thing I notice in my clients is consistency. I really ask them to try and do a daily practice, and we start with 3 minutes. We might try and move up to 7. Consistency is so important because it's that conditioning. It's that not desensitizing, but just getting used to the fact that I can
Mm.
sit in this. And it's very small changes, but highly, highly successful people like to apply themselves to things that they're really good at.
Yeah.
So the resistance the more successful somebody is, almost the more resistance because they're just not used to this not being able to do it problem.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing. We get so good at the things we like doing because of an emotional connection to it. It gives us great reward, whatever the pattern is. And then when we do something slightly to the left or to the right, it is quite disruptive. And like you say, when we're working with a client, we would like our clients to, or help our clients and guide, be there with them just to get to the first layer of this. Is this enough? Is this enough to feel this discomfort? Hopefully we have given them enough capacity to just dip in and dip out again. So things slowly start to change, and then, oh, that didn't feel so bad. Or I was able to handle it, and then you see their sense of self or their agency start building, or how they're feeling connected to something that is quite anxiety provoking, or really creating a lot of discomfort for them, feels easier and easier as it goes on. If we go to a place where we think about this process in a capitalist sense, and I'm only saying it like productizing or commodifying something, is like, oh, well, I feel one thing, I quickly want to feel the opposite. I don't want to feel tense anymore. I want yoga to feel good. So then we
Mm.
force ourselves there. That's not going to work. Unfortunately, it's not as quickly as changing something or ordering a product that's going to make something better. These things take time to get rid of that psychological tension we had in our body versus that conditioned tension we had from our exercising or athletic endeavors or doing or working a lifestyle for such a long time. We have to go really slow. It's almost like we have to unlearn, not almost, we have to unlearn those processes and ways of being and thinking and beliefs. And then the body slowly unravels into something new, or it gives opportunity for something new.
You're so right, and I'm smiling because I heard somebody
Yeah.
last in a room actually say, "I'd like to order sobriety on Amazon." And
Yeah.
we were talking about not drinking or not picking up or not using, and it just made me laugh because they're like, I just want to be able to click the button and order this sobriety thing on Amazon because the
Mm-hmm.
work, the behavior change work is not quick. And we think we can just order it or do it or press it or buy it or supplement it or biohack it. And of course we can't. We have to do the work. And that makes, I must say, anybody still listening is probably thinking, I don't want to work with Shaun and Lindsey. It sounds like it's really hard work. But I think you know as well as I do, the things that actually take the work are the most rewarding and the most satisfying.
Oh yeah. 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 Those injuries, the pain I was going through, the depression, the loss of sense of self, like the if I'm not an athlete, who am I? At a very young age, was I came crashing out of that. But beneath all of that, when I really stopped, I really looked, and I really took the time and said, okay, I'm going to surrender here. It's gotten to that level now where I have to listen to you. I have to listen to those voices and those feelings. That's when the magic happens. That's
I
where all
am
the gold is underneath all of that.
I absolutely agree. And something I would say I notice a lot with high achievers and high performers is when things get difficult as a parent or in a relationship, because they can't see how to fix it quickly or they can't feel successful, they tend to lean out. So you've got this really unpleasant situation that happens with particularly people who are very, very successful. They get into sticky situations, which are normal in life, but they don't know how to fix it. And instead of leaning in and pushing through, they just back off. And that's when I see people obviously end up with problems in their relationships, problems with their children. This leaning in and leaning and pushing through with the help of a guide, a coach, or a practitioner like you and I is so, so important. But
Mm,
almost
mm.
the more successful you are, the harder that can be sometimes because it's just not in your nature to feel
Yeah,
inadequate, maybe.
yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean, Sean, don't you? Because I know you see it in your clients as well.
yeah, yeah. And it started with me. If what happens if I reach out for help? What
Yeah.
happens if I say I'm hurting? I don't want to look weak. I don't want to look like I've been defeated or sound like I always need help. It was terrifying for me to do that. I only reached out in my 30s as a result. I went through my 20s, late 20s, 25, 24, 25 to about 30, living with that pain, living with the discomfort, but also numbing myself out from it, doing what you just said, moving away from it, doing all the things I wanted to do to distract myself and live that disconnected, disembodied life, because it's really hard to get to the edge of that abyss, or the edge, to say, okay, now I'm ready. Once you're there, and hopefully there's someone with you that you can take that step. And yeah, I think the abyss I use is it's maybe not a good analogy or image, but it's really just a step over that line. You don't fall off the edge.
No, but
Not to, yeah.
I think when we talk to high performers, I think it can be it's very exciting framing when we say when we can find the edge, that's where the growth.
Mm,
And especially post 45, we've got the brain is reordering itself. It's behaving in a very different way than it did from 25, when the prefrontal cortex has finished doing its crazy rewiring. We seem to get this window with 25 to 45, it's doing one thing, and then post 45, it's doing something slightly differently. That edge for me is where I see great transformation, where people turn up saying, I'm losing my mental clarity, I'm losing my focus, it's perhaps middle age or it's menopause. And my response is always, actually, this is your edge. This is your shift from intelligence into insight. This is we're moving from knowledge into wisdom. This is a very exciting time, and this is quite new neuroscience. But this is what you're
Yes.
talking about. When we can find that discomfort, we can be like, right, this is where the magic is going to happen. But it's hard to convince people who are turning up saying, fix me, what shall I do?
Yeah.
And they're looking for
Yeah.
an external. Sean, when somebody does turn up in your rooms and says, fix me, what do you say?
What do I say? Well, I inquire first why or how I am the one, or what they need from me in order to do it. And then it opens up a discussion, I think, about really me helping them see possibly how they could do it. I try and flip the conversation in a way that they can then see their own strengths, because the first step they've taken is they've arrived in the room. They've arrived to the session. And celebrating that moment with them, celebrating that they've gotten to this place and now are asking some questions, is what I would say is, celebrating that first, but then also understanding why they think it's me. Why am I the one that they think can help them? Yeah.
And very often, I think people have tried many things before they come into this kind of support that you and I offer. They've already been through perhaps some sort of therapeutic intervention. They perhaps had some testing done. They arrive with a physical problem or a sort of ailment that's a bit more complicated. Nobody seems to fix them. They seem to be the kind of clients that you and I attract. We're not the first port of call all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that a lot. I see people that have done a lot of talk therapy, a lot of talk coaching, and they've gotten to certain places with these modalities. Lots of meditation. I've worked with breathwork, yoga people, CEOs, high performers that have been working a lot in that edge we've been describing in the first part of the call, and they're looking for something new. Like, what next? I know things are going well, but there's a few things that can be optimized. And my main, thought about what is going on for them is sometimes I feel that the integration is missing. They've had all these amazing experiences. They've had great therapy, great talk coaching. How do I now implement these things in a practical way? Integrating the psychological, the emotional, and the physical into their life. Because sometimes we go to therapy, we go to retreats, we go to these experiences, and it all happens away from the flow of their usual pattern, which is great because they can go away and find some insights. But when they come back, it's like, well, now the schedule is full again. I've got all these meetings. It's kids. It's, back to the training. And how do I learn that, or how do I integrate that thing I learned on the retreat, whether it be a simple breathwork technique or that feeling I had about now trying to create more space for myself and setting a boundary or saying no to something. Yeah, the simple stuff. The work really begins on integration. And I find that I do a lot of integration work on the already amazing stuff people have done. And the second layer to that is I really integrate it into the body. Because the body brings behavior, I think. It brings it into action. And we know neurologically now we have 80% of our information going from neural networks and bundles in the body to the brain, and only 20% are reporting from the top down. So we have to integrate all the top-down stuff with a bottom-up experience. Yeah. So let's say someone is struggling with anxiety, and the anxiety was linked to various other relational factors or work factors. So, okay, they've got a strategy. Let's say it's a talk-based entity of modality they've used, and they've got a strategy how to deal with it when it comes up. Or they've set good practices to regulate in their schedule, day to day or moment by moment. Like, okay. So then the next thing I would say with the body level is when you're feeling anxiety, what's happening in your body? Well, I try and do the breathing thing, and then sometimes the breathing thing doesn't work. So they have all these structured elements. Okay, well, let's go into the body and now notice what that anxiety wants to say. What does it want to do? Is it a contraction? Is it this empty feeling? So explore that. And through what I've seen and witnessed, when people investigate what these sensations or feelings, in terms of a somatic feeling, not happy, sad, glad, it's like the pit in the stomach or the empty feeling in the chest. Well, then it's saying, oh, I'm afraid, or I really don't like that thing happening in my relationship anymore. Or it's saying, I need to stop. Something's saying stop. And then we do the thing, we answer that call, we do the real thing that they've just asked for. Stop, take the break, call out for something. What do you think that voice, if it had a voice, what would it say? And immediately the sensation changes. So we're taking all those practical level things of breathwork in the schedule. This is my best strategy to deal with anxiety when it comes up, which are all great. It's the first starting point. But then we need something to move the physiology, the felt sense of it as well. And that's what I just described there, is that these sensations have other messages in them. And that's when it clicks over, because the breath work is still fighting the body sensation. And again, because we're living in our heads, we're now fearful, like I was, like an athlete coming back into the body, feeling pain again. Those sensations are so uncomfortable. But we need a way of investigating them. We need a way of being with them. And eventually it's normalized. Eventually it's like, oh, well, I know anxiety's here. Oh, I can just be with myself. And I needed a hand on my chest. Yeah. And I can do this in the moment, in the office, while I'm presenting or doing my CEO thing or, presenting to a crowd.
I think you've just described the bit that makes the work so worthwhile, because when you see somebody truly use it, integrate and deploy what they've learned, it has such a massive effect around them. And the bit that I find most challenging in today's society, especially with the retreat type model, is the people that you and I are working with have often already got tools that they've picked up along the way. They've been
Mm,
on some of the best retreats. They've been with some of the best practitioners. They've been to the most exclusive London launch of whatever breathing thing that's been going on, sound bath, whatever it is that we're doing currently. But it doesn't get integrated because it gets sort of packaged as as if you'd gone for a Chinese meal and then they did it and then they left
exactly.
it. And the
Yeah.
bit that you and I do, and the bit that I'm really passionate about talking more broadly about, is don't spend all that money going away and doing the work and then not working with somebody that keeps it moving for you when you get back.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
that is frustrating. And there's a beautiful sophrology exercise called the treasure chest, where we go back and we pick up the treasure that people have already got. And
Mm,
it's part of
mm.
celebrating success. Once they see how much they've already done, they feel really like, oh, I've already done loads of work on myself. Yes,
Yes,
you just
yes,
forgot
yes.
how to use it. It's a bit like, you might have learned to drive in your 20s and then you didn't have a car until you were 40. It's a similar thing. You've done loads. Our job is just to filter it, consolidate it, and then integrate it with you. And I
Mm,
would urge
mm.
anybody who's now thinking, yeah, I did that thing when I was, in Ibiza in the 90s or whatever they were doing.
Yeah.
Let's bring that forwards and let's really use that experience, because you know all this. But sometimes, of course, it doesn't happen. Sean, I want to ask you about spiritual bypassing, because it's like a sexy term
Mm,
and I see it happening all the time. And if you are listening and you've been away on a plant medicine retreat or you've been off to South America and you've done some work, but it hasn't changed your life, can I suggest you might have done a spiritual bypass? Because people seem to turn up in my rooms and I think, gosh, I'm sure they're going to be a lot almost further ahead, but they're not. They've
mm,
done the
mm,
things,
mm,
and
mm,
then what?
mm.
What are you
Yeah.
seeing? What are your thoughts on spiritual bypassing and what are you seeing happening?
Well, to build on what I was saying earlier, it's a similar situation where one, this industry of wellness and peak experiences and feeling enlightened, let's say, I would say, and I'm going to be talking at it at a level that's neurological and physiological, because when we go on those experiences, we have a huge experience. Let's call it a life. I mean, it's technically termed a peak experience. I think there's a book which I've forgotten the author, but it's called Peak Experiences. And what this moment or this moment when it happens, is that we have huge insight. Sometimes we learn too much too quickly. Remember the jump I was saying? In a way, the capitalist model is, I feel this way, but I want to get to there very quickly, just by the click of a button. Plant medicine or any other medium you're using internally to shift the state, to change what you want to change, happens too fast, too quickly. So psychologically and physiologically, it's too much of the information, and too much of your defenses and your protective mechanisms you had all of your life are literally just opened and let free.
Mm.
So you're too open. So some people have a very uncomfortable experience where they have a slight break and they experience too much too quickly. And then you get people that have amazing experience. They feel connected. They feel this oneness. And then afterwards, because we're conditioned to think that once we have this experience, everything is solved, everything is fixed, the button has been clicked. But that's not how our physiology and our neurochemistry and the brain work. If this thing has been bugging you for 30 years, it's going to take a while to unravel. Yes, you've had this moment of insight, but yet again, we need to come back to integration afterwards. That's where the work begins. You've learned the thing. Now we have to come back to the integration afterwards. There should be at least 6 to 8 weeks of group integration from these experiences. It does happen and it doesn't happen. Or you have someone, if you have a therapist or a coach and you say you want to go on one of these experiences, have some integration sessions afterwards about the experience. I would recommend that. Yeah, I have had people come back from these experiences, migraines, they've never had night terrors before, they're like having a PTSD experience, weird somatic body symptoms afterwards, your body's getting rid of all that stress and emotional chemistry again, you're going back to times that were then in your past and quickly reliving them, again coming to that edge slowly and dipping your toe into these extreme stressful life events that you may have experienced. Must be done with real care and in a gentle way. So your defense structures and your ways of being and all your behavioral patterns that have kept you safe after these experiences can unravel slowly, so you have the option and opportunity to make a new choice and to build something new slowly again, reestablish new patterns, new behaviors, new beliefs, new ways of thinking and feeling. So at that level, I'm not really talking about spiritual bypassing, but the part that could be connected to spiritual bypassing is that I have this moment and now I'm upper level. I've transcended all of the stuff I was feeling and worried about and I wanted to change. And unfortunately, in a physiological and neurological way of speaking, that can't happen that quickly. I'm sorry to be the party pooper, but I'm speaking from a place of deep care and safety for people. I mean, I've experimented with plant medicine, but I've done so recklessly and in a very careful way. So I know its power, but really you will bump into parts of yourselves that will make you, or maybe it'll give you an uncomfortable experience, but you'll also bump into parts of yourself that you'll see that are truly there that you want. Yeah. And there was a great line in a movie about ayahuasca, and it's not really about chasing a high with that plant. It's a teacher. It will show you what you might not want to see. So, yeah, wrapped up all into spiritual bypassing. I've given a neurological and physiological perspective as well, but also from please be gentle with yourself. This is a really important journey you're on with yourself, and I know you probably want to get there quickly, but maybe the plant medicine or extreme peak experiences might not be the thing that's going to click it over for you. Let's say you've done a few years of therapy or coaching or some stabilizing work before the experience, which would be great. Then have your peak experience and then please integrate it afterwards.
Yeah, I think the challenge is, of course, that it's not widely talked about enough. So you have people that are almost doing it in isolation. it's rare that somebody will come to me and say, can I do some prep work and can I do some integration work as well? What I normally
Mm.
have is we've had experiences who think they're going to go back and then think, actually, I could do with some support, or they've already been and then they need to do the integration.
Yes, yes, yes.
Which is super, I mean, I think it's super interesting, but you're right. We can't, our mindset is let's fast forward this all the time. Where's the quick win? Where's the hack? And it
Mm.
just doesn't work that way. Sean, I want to ask you, as one of our final questions, about the concept of doing versus being, because I know you and I mean, the clue is in the name of the podcast, Rich, Simple Human, and the art of being yourself, not being a human doing. You know, you are a human being. And of course, we're not in
Mm.
the day, we're just doing, doing, doing. What do you say to people about that concept, and how could you encourage our listeners to be in the being and not in the doing?
To be in the being and not in the doing. I mean, for myself, it's still something I'm working with. It's a continued practice, I'd say that, to start. It's something that you have to want to, at an emotional level, be connected to in some ways. Yeah. Because doing is great. Doing has given us a lot of things in the modern world. It's allowed us to progress in many different fields. It's allowed us to progress as a human organism. Firstly, also, I would say doing isn't a bad thing. Yeah. And to say doing or being, it's not that black and white again. And again, in a capitalist sense, it's on or off, black or white, yes and no. I have the product ordered, I use it, and then it's thrown away. So really, again, it's a spectrum. And knowing and being aware of having this tool, this other sense of agency you can develop to surf along that.
Yeah.
And the most important thing I would say about doing and being is, right, we know what doing is. We know what that feels like. Like the head example I gave in the beginning of the podcast. Really discover what that is for you. Because when you look at it, you're like, wow, I do a lot. When we caught up in the pace of life, we don't realize we've done a lot.
Yeah.
And then we still beat ourselves up because we haven't been to the gym today. And then really figure out a way to feel, see, or notice at every level of your being what is being like? What is that feeling like? Because we have to come back to it. It's a different feeling to doing. Because if we don't have that reference point, we won't know what that is. Again, we're going to be chasing this thing that being, I just need to lie still. But on every other level, spiritual, mental, I'm still doing at 1,000 miles an hour. So to really investigate at a physical, emotional, and psychological level, what is being like for you? And I would say that's a way into understanding what that spectrum could look like for you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's exciting work. That's one of my favourite parts of the work I do, when you get to explain to somebody almost for the first time. You're not sitting there trying to make your brain go completely clear and, you know,
Mm,
doing
mm,
entering nothingness. You can actually use, you know, you can just be aware of the breath. You can just say to yourself, I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. You could perhaps be doing a touch type exercise where you're actually noticing the details of, you know, your hands, or you're doing a hearing exercise. That can still
exactly.
be a being thing, although it's a doing thing in a being sense. Yeah, there's so
Mm.
much out there, isn't there? Sean, have you got any resources, or, well, first of all, where can people find you if they'd like to talk to you more? And then have you got any resources or tools or books that you'd like to point people towards? Because I know that you and I have got so much to say on so many of these subjects.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can find me at Be Fully Human. It's our leadership consultancy. And also my Instagram is Shaun_Brooking. And it's Shaun, Shaun, spelled the real way. And wow, resources and reading material. I would say if you're looking for something nervous system based, read the book The Brain That Changes Itself by Norman
Mm,
Doidge. Great book. So you get a real meaty foundation of, or understanding of, how neural networks and brain neuroplasticity basically works. There's great examples, great case studies. And I really like, and have still been digesting, The Body Keeps the Score. There's so much in there. And yeah, I think Yeah, there's also another book called Your Body is Your Brain by Amanda Blake, another somatic leadership practitioner. I would say anyone, athlete, mover, leader, would benefit from that book because of the context of how we show up as a body in work, life, and relating, and really how our organism is looking for what we spoke about before the call started was about connection and safety and belonging, those core human needs, those core things we need to function as a human. Because if we are threatened, if we have a threat to safety or connection or belonging or our dignity, our worth in the world, our nervous system gets really stressed. And then we do very interesting things to try and soothe that or correct it, environmentally or relationally, yeah, or
We
towards
also
ourselves. Yeah.
we make terrible decisions when we're in that position. And
Mm-hmm.
if you are a leader, you really want to be creative in making decisions from a place of not activated nervous system. You want your prefrontal cortex to be working properly. You don't want the amygdala to be firing all over the place. But people seem to think it's okay to work like that. And of course, we know it's not sustainable. It causes burnout, fatigue, and creates risk and error in high stress environments. So that was our cheery warning for today. There's so much in there, Shaun, and I would really urge people to slow down and just begin
Mm,
to notice the difference between, am I right here, right now in my body, or am I in my brain somewhere completely different? I mean, that in itself is transformational.
mm,
Just
mm.
learning to notice, okay, right now, am I in a being state or am I in a doing state? Did I do any being at all today, or was I just doing, doing, doing? Because
Yeah.
it's not sustainable, and it's a rubbish place to live from.
Yeah, yeah. I have a great practice that I do in our teachings. We work with the three brain model, head, heart, body, because there's three independent nervous systems. And we delve a little bit deeper into our programs about how and why these three nervous systems influence behavior and relating. Yeah. But if we use what you've just said and say, let's just take a pause, let's take a moment for ourselves, and we check in, head, heart, body. What do you need? Just really sit and think and feel and sense for a moment on those three levels. What's the head doing? Oh, it's racing. What does it need? A hand on the forehead. Yeah, or just something, you know. It needs to write. What's the heart saying? Oh, it's feeling a bit painful or heavy. What does it need? It needs some connection or a chat with someone. Yeah. What does the body need? Body feels really heavy and tired. Okay. What does it need? Lie down. Get your feet on the grass. Really something simple. But really tuning into all three layers of us, all three of those centers of intelligence, connecting with head, heart, body.
And that consciousness is life changing, because my
Oh,
default used to be, oh, I have a feeling, let's eat or drink or do something sort of totally
mm,
distracting. And of course, we all do that and we see people do it. And then when you call them
yeah.
out on it, and they sort of stop and say, what are you talking about? But I just saw you do that thing, eat, drink, or do whatever to distract yourself from what you're really feeling.
Mm,
Everything you need, you already have everything you need. You just need to go in there and find it
exactly.
for hours and hours. But is there anything you'd like to add to that conversation before we go on so long nobody ever listens till the end, which is such a shame?
I think I've said, yeah, no, I think I've said more than enough. Yeah, there's lots of richness there. And maybe I will say is that echoing what you said is that it's all there for you. It's already there. The starting place is just you getting to that edge and then taking a look inside, look in that treasure chest. It's
Yeah,
all there.
so
Yeah.
exciting. Well,
Yeah.
until next time, you know where to find us. Sean's links will be down below. Mine is, of course, Human with Lindsey on Instagram, Lindsey Francis on LinkedIn, and Rich Simple Human on any podcast platform. Please do share with anybody that might like to hear this conversation. And until next time, thank you so much to my listeners. Thank you to my guest today. And keep being a human being and not a human doing.